before you people curse me too much, I asked him, don't you guys need a tea break? And he said, no. Is that fair? My God, this is a really dedicated audience. I think Raju has done a wonderful job. Okay, my goal here, and I told this to Raju, so I'm telling you also, is to not make one long speech and tell you how you must change your life, because I'm sure you know that by now, but to actually share some thoughts with you on the way India is progressing. And let me start with a story. Okay, November last year, my wife and I decided to go to Ladakh. It's one of our favorite destinations. If any of you have been to the Khardungla Pass and Pangong Lake, you'll know what I mean. And we just needed a refresh after doing too much of hard work during COVID. Sounds like an oxymoron, but I'll tell you what we do. And interesting, because we went to one of the topmost monasteries there. It's called the Lamayuru Monastery in Ladakh. And this was about 11:30 in the morning. And I remember we went up there, and there was this young girl, she must be hardly, 27, 28, sitting in a corner of the monastery. And when we finished, she said, look, if you guys are going back to lake, can I get a lift back? So we said, sure, no problem. And we started chatting with her. And she's from Odisha and working in Bangalore and working for one of the top companies, which we shall not name. And so we said, how long have you been in Ladakh? And she told my wife, I've been here for 6 weeks. Maybe I'll be here for another 3-4 weeks. And my wife said, look, I mean, obviously this large company is very nice. They're giving you like 3 months off. She says, no, I'm working. So this is, my antenna went up immediately. She said, what do you mean by I'm working? She said, very simple. I do a managed services contract for a large American client. And she was obviously in an IT company. And she said, at 8:30 in the morning, I get up. I switch on my computer. So I've logged in. And then I go tourism all over Ladakh. And I come back at 5:30 and I log out of my computer. So we asked her, but how does that work? I mean, what is your work? And if any of you are in technology, you'll know that there is, when you do maintenance contracts, which, by the way, is what 40 lakh people in our industry do. I mean, no serious development, but actually maintenance. You get maybe one ticket once in 7 hours. And she said, look, when I get a ticket, I've got an AI installed that I will get it on my phone. So the minute I know I have a maintenance ticket, I'll call my friend in Bangalore, and she'll get onto my ID and fix it for me. And when she goes on a break, I do the same thing for her. So that started a serious concern in my mind on where are we going in this country. So I went to Bangalore and spent a week. I talked to my nephew, my own nephew, my cousin sister's son, and said, what are you doing nowadays? He says, uncle, I'm so happy. My salary used to be 15 lakhs per year. Now it's gone up to 47 lakhs per year. I said, buddy, what do you do now? He says, I work full-time for this company, top multinational. I work full-time for this company, top Indian company. And I actually work for 2 startups. I'm working from home, okay? So again, the same thing. I mean, he's got 2 computers and 3, in fact, in front of 2 computers which are managing that maintenance contract that he talked about, and 1 where he does real work. And on top of that, he says, look, I feel horribly underused. So if you find somebody else who can use me from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening, let me know. I mean, I want to cross 50 lakhs this year. So I'm like almost on a give up mode nowadays, okay, when it comes to HR. Okay, some of you are smiling, some of you are saying, how the hell does he know all this? Okay, and many of us turn a complete blind eye, okay? And why, I'll backtrack now and maybe speak to you for about 15 minutes, but very happy to answer any questions. If Raju gives me, out of the half an hour allotted to me, 10 minutes for I'm going to make some provocative statements, but I want to answer those questions. What I do for a living, apart from all the hype that Raju gave you, I mean, for my sins, I ran 2 large companies, Aptech, which we built from a little 7 computer center company, to almost 1,400 computer centers across 42 countries, including China, where we became a market leader. Then I got bored with computer training, moved to Pune, took over a company called Zensar Technologies, small 40 crore company, and we grew that like crazy to 4,500 crores by the time I left. And all this was through purely what I call, I mean, today is fashionable to say everybody's talking about ESG, environment, social, governance, etc. But we had a very simple formula. We said we will only focus on the triple bottom line. And I still remember 2002, when I first talked to analysts on the stock exchange, and they asked me, look, what's going to be your strategy? This has been a struggling company. You've got to make it happen. I told them, look, I'll focus on triple bottom line. People, planet, and profits. And I was cursed by the stock market, saying, what are you talking about? This company is not given a dividend for the last 20 years, and here you are talking about triple bottom line. For heaven's sake, show us some profits, okay? And I said, look, this is the way we'll show you sustainable profits. And this is public knowledge, because we were a listed company, continue to be a listed company. 2011 to 2015, the market value of Zensar Technologies went up 44% per year for 5 years. And it was because of then a lot of my analyst friends came and told me, hey, maybe you had something right when you said focus on people and planet and then profits. And I'm going to come back to this right at the end. What we do, in fact, what we did during COVID was, first of all, we ensured that our organization was safe. Unlike many of my large company CEO friends who said, oh, everybody can now work from home, and Prime Minister Modi has announced a 6 weeks lockdown. Go back wherever you want, make sure you're logging in. And a lot of people in Maharashtra went to Sangli and Satara and Amravati and what have you, and had terrible connectivity. And even today, I'm just coming off a State Bank committee meeting, and even from here, the connectivity was terrible. So I prefer actually to go for State Bank board meetings right there to Nariman Point. It's so much more easier to see people interact and add more value. My wife was very clear. We have 440 people working for our group. We primarily do digital consulting and skills, as Raju was mentioning. And those 6 weeks that the Prime Minister said lockdown, of course we locked down. But we told people, look, if you're working for us in Pune or Bangalore or Hyderabad, make sure you stay within the cities of Pune or Bangalore or Hyderabad. No, can I do it from my hometown? I live in a village in Kerala and I can do it equally from there. We said, sorry, you've been employed to work in Pune. Please stay in Pune. Net result was, at the end of the 6 weeks lockdown, a lot of people came back to us and said, please, can you open the office? Can you expand it? Can you make it bigger? We still want to come to office. Why? Because young people, 4 people staying in a 2-bedroom apartment, cannot work from home. Or if they do work from home, they'll do what my nephew does and make tons of money and not really do work. So this is something we discovered. Today, we have a 6% attrition rate in our company. And when I look at all my large brethren who say in Bangalore, never come to Bangalore on Wednesday and Thursday, because nowadays that's the only time they come to office. They have Monday off, Friday off, everything is continuing as happiness as usual. I myself am on the board of a company, which is a fairly large BPO company. We employ 42,000 people in 7 countries. Everybody is working from home. And I do not believe that productivity can be what it should be at this point of time. So in this process, we started writing books. If any of you are interested in reading, I know it's a dying habit these days, but there are 2 amazing books that we wrote collaboratively. When I say collaboratively, I'm part of something called the Pune International Center, which is led by very eminent people like Dr. Vijay Kelkar, who was India's finance secretary, Dr. Raghunath Mashalkar, who is, of course, one of India's principal scientists, and most of us worked together on writing these books. The first book happened, if any of you remember, early on in COVID, we had this big problem of the Chinese incursion into Ladakh. Okay, and try as we could and all the things that you finally heard in the press, it was crazy. And 6 of us got together and we actually sat around in Dr. Mashalkar's office and said, look, what do we do as a country? What's our response? Now, if you're an army man, bless you for that, you will say, let's go hit the daylights out of the Chinese. Easy to say, not that easy to accomplish. The most important problem in dealing with China, in fact, the book that you'll see outside is called Facing Up to the China Challenge, is that we cannot fight China militarily. So how do you think we should fight China? Anybody? Anybody? What is the response that will make us as good, if not better than China? Come on, guys, not that difficult. Sorry? Economically, that's the word I was looking for. If you look at China and India about maybe, let's take it, maybe 200 years back, absolutely the same. There was no difference in the countries. We were both together 30% of global GDP. China, during COVID time, went up to, at the year of COVID, let's say 2021, was $16 trillion of GDP. We were at 2.9. Somewhere we lost the plot. Somewhere we lost the plot by saying that, look, if you're not an economic equal, nothing you do, politically, diplomatically, whichever way you do, will make you compete. So our first book, if any of you care to read it, we said, how do we deal with the China challenge diplomatically, through economics, through human resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we actually came up with multiple sectors where we can compete with China at some point of time, like rare earths, lithium, where we just had these huge deposits. The second is where we can compete and actually stand shoulder to shoulder with China. Telecom, I mean, for whatever you may think of Reliance, I think what they're doing in Geo and Quantum is absolutely fantastic. And that'll make us compete shoulder to shoulder. And sectors where we can be substantially superior to China at some point of time, automobile components, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm glad to say we had lots of meetings with the government. I won't claim that the government listened to us all the time, but at least some of the initiatives that the government has taken, the PLI scheme for manufacturing, the whole Digital India sequence, which I'm very much a part of, all this is actually taking steps in that direction. Then I went to Ladakh and had this experience, okay? So then I started thinking, and this was November last year, saying if this is what's going to happen to the country, and people are just going to lose their way altogether, we still have to think about what are the pathways, India's pathways to success. So a different group of people, of course, Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Kelkar were common, but we got a different set of economists together and say, how do we really become the $40 trillion economy that we have to buy? Why do we have to become a $40 trillion economy? Because there's so many people. I mean, I remember I have two very good American friends from New York, and they'd come once and said, you take us to a part of India which we will never go to by ourselves. Where would you take them? You would obviously not take them to Jaipur and Agra and where Kerala, etc. So where would you take somebody who has never been to that part of the country before? Any city that comes to your mind? No. So the first choice was Bihar. I grew up in Bihar, so I said, we must take you to Bihar because otherwise you'll never go without a... And we actually took them to Varanasi, spent 3 days in Varanasi, took a car, 4 of us. We just drove down from eastern Uttar Pradesh to Bihar to finally landed up in Patna airport. And in between, I still remember we were in Gaya, not Bodh Gaya, where all the lovely monasteries are. And Gaya, we were just wandering around the streets, and we met this little boy. He must be about 9, 10 years old. And I'm going to say something in Hindi. I hope some of you who don't know Hindi will forgive me. But so Lynn, my friend's wife, asked me, what does this boy want to do when he grows up? So I translated that to him, कि भैया बड़ा बन के क्या करोगे? So he said, मैं तो police officer बनूंगा. So why police officer? उनको बहुत पैसा मिलता है. Now don't ask me how the पैसा comes up, but whatever, okay? And I said, look, everybody can't get into the police force, right? He says, police officer नहीं बनोगे तो क्या करोगे? तो मैं सड़क छाप लफंगा बनूंगा. For those of you who don't know Hindi, it really means, a kind of street side ruffian. Why is he saying this? Because his parents are telling him, कि तुम बड़ा होके तुम काम, if you don't study, you will become the street ruffian. So I didn't even know how to translate it to ruffian, to Lynn, saying here is a boy whose ambition is to become a sadak chhap lafanga. But it also started me thinking that look, how many of the, and I'll name a number, my belief is that there are at least 5 to 8 crores employable youth today in this country who are not employed or who are hugely underemployed. I mean, sitting in Mumbai, you won't realize it. But if you go to Lucknow and then maybe go to a town close to Lucknow, you'll find that in a tea shop, in the middle of the day, there are 14 adults sitting around the tea shop. What are they doing there? Why aren't they working? Because they don't have work. Okay, and this is the biggest crisis that can face our country. So we actually wrote these pathways, and I'll come to the end of this. And we said, okay, we need to, and if you look at the book, we talked about what do we do in agriculture. Okay, we've got it wrong in agriculture in terms of productivity, and you can read about it. We talked about manufacturing, exactly what we need to do, which of the PLIs, is it specialty steels, is it food processing, is it electronics, and there are 10 PLI areas announced. What should we do to make these things happen? Some of you in manufacturing would be interested in that. The third, of course, is services. I mean, we're very proud of our services industry. But like that girl in Ladakh, who doesn't even believe she's doing something wrong. There's an ethical conflict here. In fact, I asked my nephew, saying, don't you have any ethics left? He says, uncle, ethics means not getting caught. No, this is a new Indian Jugaad definition of ethics. Okay. But he genuinely believes it. Now, what do you do to that? So that's the point we're making, that even services, we're so proud of the burgeoning IT industry that many of us built, $240 billion. But you won't retain that status purely on people. You have to make them savvy. I mean, the gentleman from Zimbabwe made a very interesting point on technology, on HR. See, my belief is, and I think he said that also, and we've actually described it in the book, that every mundane, repetitive job will be taken over by technology. I don't believe ChatGPT will kill all of us, which all of us believe that AI is the end of this world, because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence can never simulate the natural stupidity that many of us have. Okay. Because that makes us so unpredictable that it makes life very, very complicated. So what we believe, and I'll end with this, that India has two things going for it, irrespective of whether you focus on better, science, technology, innovation is a big disaster in this country for the simple reason that even today, so many years after independence, we have 0.6% of our GDP invested in science and technology. Japan, Germany, US, 3% of GDP. And we cannot succeed as a producing nation by just being in services. So we are saying tremendous investments in technology is important, and we've actually written a full chapter on Digital India. As all of you know, one of India's best success stories, yesterday we were at dinner with the US Consul General, and we were talking about the same thing. And he said, surely, you can take the UPI example, okay, the Unified Payment Interface example, which my friend Nandan Nilekani really brought up. We had JAM, which is the Jandhan, Aadhaar, mobility, etc. But somebody created a killer application called mobile interfaces. Just 4 months back, I was in Mumbai airport at 6 in the morning, and I went to the coffee shop all bleary-eyed and said, look, coffee milega kya? So then I held out a 500 rupee note. He said, "Sab change nahi hai." I held out a credit card. He says, "I stopped accepting credit cards long back." So I said, how do people pay for coffee? So he says, "Sir, Google Pay karo na sab." So a guy who's probably not even educated is saying, Google Pay karo, Paytm karo, and this is completely changing the environment. And if you look at the other aspect of what we've written in the book, so the Digital India UPI interface can now translate itself to better skills platforms, education platforms, SME platforms, etc. And there's a huge opportunity sitting out there. So that's the technology piece. And finally, talent. We do have the biggest demographic dividend in the world. We all know that. India is the country which has the highest number of percentage of population below the age of 35, and we've got to leverage that. But the point I was making about the Sadak Chak Lafanga aspirant, the demographic dividend can become a demographic disaster if we don't create aspiration in young people. The lady before me talked about inner voice. We have to make that inner voice of that guy in Gaya, tell him that I want to be successful. Successful ethically by hard work and not by doing some wonderful jugaad innovation. So I think that's really what we have to look at. And this is something that I am now spending my entire life upon. What we do in Pune, in the slum communities, what we're now starting in Uttar Pradesh is exactly that. That not people like you, you have the agency, the aspiration, the skills to do what you must. But remember, there is a real Bharat out there. And if we have to succeed, we have to succeed in an inclusive and collaborative fashion. So that's our second book. And we have a third book coming out. In fact, we said we will write it as a trilogy of what will make India successful. And no prizes for guessing. We are talking about the third book. It's a working name. We haven't created the name yet. It's called Unleashing Nari Shakti. Because I still believe that the power of women in this country is relatively untapped. In fact, in our book, we've talked about feminization of agriculture. Today, you go to farms across rural India, you will find that women and children are working on the farms. What's the guy doing? He's sitting and getting drunk. Okay, so clearly, there is something we have to do to make sure that women take their rightful position, and we are actually looking at the 10 avatars of Shakti and saying that, look, how does Shakti manifest itself in every aspect of making India successful? Many of our male leaders may not like it, but we genuinely believe that's a part, to be honest. So I'll stop here by saying, focusing on technology to enable various activities of life, focusing on talent, okay, to make sure that the youth of this country, the youth bulge as we call it, and the Nari Shakti or the women that in this country are completely empowered to make themselves successful. Our belief is that is the pathway to India's success. So hopefully you'll read those two books, and then I promise you I'll send you an advanced copy of the third book as we come on. Thank you very much. Anybody has a comment or a question on anything I said, please feel free.
I am Suresh from Gujarat Metro Rail Corporation. What should be the role of HR in 5 trillion economy creating for India? Is one of the vision for the Modi ji.
Have you seen Ayush Shraddha's last video on HR? How HR heads were all the time saying, and it's such a lovely one. She says, HR were told, treat everybody as family, take them on picnics, etc., etc. And now they're saying, okay, now we fire those guys. Okay. So HR should maintain the balance that CEOs do not have. Okay, because CEOs, as the lady, as the lady before me, I had a wonderful HR head in Zensar. All the credit I do. In fact, I still remember when Harvard Business School wrote a case on what they called love at Zensar, which was the sentiment that we used. David Garvin, who wrote the case, actually asked me, so what is the secret sauce of your 3% attrition in an industry where there's 19% attrition or 25% or whatever? And I used to tell him that, look, it is the power of, and in fact, HBR wrote an article on this. We used to call them ARs, okay, associate relations. For every 200 people we had in the organization, we had a well-trained human resource person who was their mother, father, daughter, son, but they would go to them with all their problems. So they would never ever quit. They would take the AR's permission to even think of quitting, okay? So that is what was important. I mean, obviously you need, I myself am very passionate towards people, as you can make out. But in organizations where the CEO is only focused on the bottom line or the first P of profits, HR has to play a huge role of saying, boss, you go do your stuff. I will make sure the people take you forward. One of my collaborators used to actually have a lovely cartoon which said that, look, leaders believe that it is their job as CEO to drag the organization along to success. HR should make the leader believe that it is the organization's job to be joyous and happy, as Raju said, and carry the leader to success. Then the leader never has to work. Then you have to do all the hard work. So that's my answer to your question. Make sure that you partner. Business partner is a cliched term, but partnering each individual to achieve their aspirations is something that I think HR should be looking at. Yeah. Yes, Tarita. My God, the boss herself.
Ganesh, indeed, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. But my question to you is, you have been associated with the corporate world and the IT and education world. Me coming from the education world, you started your talk, about people working from home and hybrid. How much is hybrid going to work in the field of education?
How much of?
Hybrid. Hybrid education. How much is it going to work? Everybody's talking about it. How much is it going to actually work? Or are we also in education all going to be talking about, getting the youngsters back on campus, in reality, in life?
Okay, let me answer your question, Tarita, in two parts.
Thank you.
One is school education. Okay, I have a very close friend and she has a very bright 10-year-old son. So I remember going to her house one day when he was learning on Zoom from his class, etc. And all these kids by then knew when to mute, when to unmute, when to look at when the teacher is watching, etc. And they were all doing a side chat, commenting on how stupidly the teacher is dressed and so on and so forth. Okay, so at the end of it, I asked this guy, his name is Abhay. So I asked Abhay, look, are you learning anything? He said, no, anyway, I don't learn from school in any case. So we're having fun. We love these online classes. Okay. So, we call it the 2 years of lost education. Okay, where, people probably grew up and became more naughty in their own life, but they didn't learn much. Okay. So to answer your question, and this, as you know, I've been doing research on e-learning for 40 years. Okay. In fact, when we first started thinking about e-learning, that was, I think, way back 1991, we actually said that, look, if there is, to my mind, the most evangelistic speaker in the country, in the world has ever been Tom Peters. If any of you attended a Tom Peters class, he would mesmerize you. None of you would dare to look at your WhatsApp. Those days there was no WhatsApp while he was speaking. Because that was the power of his personality. And we used to tell ourselves, if we can use e-learning to deliver 95% of the effectiveness of a Tom Peters in class, we would have succeeded. The sad reality is, if you know the statistics, even today in the US, for all the Skillsofts and Coursera's, etc., the course completion rate of people using learning is less than 12%. Okay, and it's just a problem of not enough. So we're doing a lot of research and developing new technologies for engaging e-learning. But to answer your question, hybrid is the only way to go. But you have to think about it intelligently, which means that all the prerequisite learning, the reinforcement learning, the remedial learning, the post-learning, additional learning can be done through technology. But what is extremely important, that the interaction in the classroom, which is what makes Abhay more successful, will have to be done by humans. Maybe one day AI will take it over, etc., etc. But right now, keep it that way. So I would say, even if you bring it down to 30% classroom and 70% e-learning, make sure the 70% is effectively designed, so it's personalized, and then you can take it forward. So that's my reason.
Good evening, sir. Actually, my question is based on your story that you started with, that you worked on app tech, and then you nurtured it, you put it on top of the market, and then you got bored. And then you shifted to some other company, and then you did the same thing what we did with the app tech. So actually, what I want to know is that even negative emotions, being bored, makes you do great things. But in reality, when we work in the corporate world, you go to your HR and you tell that I'm bored. You don't know what kind of hell he or she will raise. So my point of view is even the negative emotions makes us do great thing, and you are the best example of it, at least today evening.
Okay, now let me answer your question.
So, like, to the HRs, can you tell them that rather than, just focusing on that particular word that my team member or somebody under me who's really getting bored, to put it into a channel, because that's what you did. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but you put that negative emotions and you created a 4,000 crore company.
Okay, so let me answer your question.
Yeah.
First of all, the problem is that people go to HR and say, I'm bored after 4 months. Okay, I did it to I went to Mr. Atul Nishar, who was the founder of Aptech, and Mr. Harsh Goenka, who was the principal shareholder of Zensar, after 10 years in Aptech and 15 years in Zensar, respectively. So because today, everybody is looking for instant gratification. Okay? They think money is most important. How much more money can I make if I jump a job? I mean, if you remember the great resignation 1 year back, everybody was jumping for 30% salary increases. And now I was reading a statistic saying that 80% of them want to come back to the same company, but maybe they'll give me the 30% hike. No, they won't. Okay? They weren't born yesterday either. So the point I'm making is, by all means, when you feel that you've your energy is not there, I mean, I know when that happens to me. I mean, even in Zensar, I mean, I left on the day I was supposed to retire, okay? And I mean, in theory, any large business group, Marwadi-owned group you can continue to lever till the Lala tells you to go, okay? So that's life. But in my case, I said, look, I will go on my terms, okay? I've done a 15-year stint. If I do another 5-year stint, I mean, I'll just do the same thing over and over again. So all CEOs, I love the American system. I mean, the average American CEO tenure is not more than 4.5 years. And I think there's a value in that. Because CEOs learn very fast, hopefully. So within 6 months, the guy knows what he's doing. If you give him another 3-4 years to deliver, after that, nothing much new is going to happen. So you need that refreshment. Look at what Sundar Pichai is doing. Look at what Satya Nadella is doing in their companies. Because they knew, they've had the experience, and they're making stuff happen. So I think that's something you need to think. So the answer to your question is, I would say, positively bored in search of new experience. And right now, I'm having a blast. 3 large boards, 4 large social enterprises, and still doing consulting on digital and skills. So, I mean, it's a perfect life. Okay, but nobody else can do what I do, which is 14 things a day, and still be at Raju's beck and call whenever he calls me to come and speak. You need to do time management very, very carefully. But till you get there, give yourself time. Tell your people that, look, it takes 3-4 years for you to add value to the organization. So don't jump every year. It's not going to help you at all. So that's my concluding answer to your question. Okay? And as I said, I'm very much here till 9 o'clock, he says. So feel free to catch me anytime you want a question to ask. I mean, that's why I'm here with Raju. Thank you so much.